Samuel Harris Gibstein Altman was born on April 22, 1985, in Chicago, but grew up in the Midwest. And his early life is worth noting because it already sets the tone for someone who would both build and unsettle institutions, having shown precarious technical interest, leaving Stanford after just 2 years to found the mobile social app called Loopt, and then selling that company as a young founder before pivoting into the world of startup acceleration and investment. He joined Y Combinator in 2011, rose to become its president in 2014. And in that role, he shaped an enormous pipeline of startups and a particular culture of Silicon Valley optimism and risk taking that in many ways defined the decade that followed, which means that his biography is not a straight ascent, but a sequence of bets and reinventions that gave him both credibility and influence in equal measure in that space. So he co-founded OpenAI in 2015 and became its CEO in 2019, a role that has both amplified his voice about the future of artificial intelligence and placed him squarely at the center of debates over mission, governance, and commercialization. And although his leadership produced ChatGPT and unprecedented public engagement with generative AI, his tenure also saw a dramatic rupture in November 2023 when the company's board briefly removed him, an episode that revealed fault lines between investors, directors, and employees, and that culminated in his rapid reinstatement months later after employee upheaval and external negotiations, which left many observers asking whether the crisis was a personal failing, a governance failure, or an inevitable stress test for any organization attempting to recreate research, policy, and profit under one roof. Sam's appetite for large scale structural projects is visible beyond OpenAI in ventures that have drawn equal parts praise and worry, such as WorldCoin, which he co founded with a promise of a global identity layer paid in tokens and enabled by biometric iris scanning orbs, an initiative that explicitly tried to square technological trust with economic inclusion, but that also prompted intense scrutiny from privacy advocates and regulators in multiple countries over biometric data collection and consent policies. And that controversy is instructive because it shows him capable of grand visions that move quickly into contested social territory, revealing a very specific pattern. He launches big, moves fast, and lets regulation and public opinion and the media catch up to a model that has been designed more in the Silicon Valley idiom of scaling than in the cautious idiom of public policy. He's also an investor with broad reach, co-founding Hydrazine Capital, backing hundreds of startups, and deploying capital into energy and biotech as well as software, while simultaneously taking on governance roles that shape industrial futures. For example, as an active backer of fusion research through repeated funding rounds for Helion Energy, and as an early investor and later chairman at nuclear startups such as Oklo, actions that demonstrate an interest in solving hard infrastructure problems like energy supply for data centers, but that also create obvious conflict potential when a CEO of a major AI provider invests in power suppliers that could benefit from the very compute expansion his company pursues. Those entanglements matter because they blur the line between public minded problem solving and a private enrichment. And they force a more careful look at disclosure, at recusal, and structural safeguards in companies that sit at the intersection of platform power and national infrastructure. There are facts that tilt in his favor, like he has repeatedly argued publicly that artificial general intelligence could transform society for the better. He has mobilized unprecedented capital and technical talent to accelerate research, and he has also signed philanthropic commitments like the Giving Pledge, while supporting ambitious clean energy bets. But those same facts sit awkwardly beside persistent critiques. Critics say that his companies sometimes prioritize growth and proprietary advantage over open safety research, that his investment footprint raises conflict questions, and that his public optimism about timelines and control underestimates geopolitical and social risk. Moreover, a new and personal legal allegation filed in January 2025 by his sister, which he and his family have publicly denied, has become an additional and eye opening inflection point in how the public evaluates leaders whose private lives and public responsibilities overlap in consequential ways. And caring observers must weigh both his demonstrable achievements and the serious unresolved allegations when judging whether his influence is, on balance, a net benefit or a risk to institutions that now pivot around him. So, where does all of this leave the ledger of what Sam Altman represents? He is an entrepreneur who turned early success into a platform for massive technological ambition. He is a venture capitalist whose bets stretch from software to fusion. He is an executive who shepherded one of the world's most consequential startups through explosive growth and through corporate crisis. He is also a public intellectual of sorts who talks openly about timelines for superintelligence and about the need for governance while also presiding over business structures that complicate naive accounts of altruism. And he is a human being whose family dispute now sits in court and whose actions and investments and rhetoric will be judged for years to come, which means that any clear verdict on his legacy must wait until the outcomes of regulatory reviews, the results of internal reforms at OpenAI, the judicial findings about personal allegations, and the long arc of whether the institutions he helped create tilt toward public benefit or private capture. And the question that lingers as we try to make sense of all of these facts, the feeds and the frictions, is this: do we now as a society want technologists who will move mountains quickly at the risk of tearing the mortar between them? Or do we prefer slower builders whose restraint may also delay remedies we seem to desperately need?